clinic location. Now, of course, this is quite a big decision to make, and you may be watching this and you know the location that you're going to be using, but even if you feel that's the case, what I want to do throughout this training module is break down the three main concepts, the three main possibilities that I see for a clinic location. And before you really dive into the rest of this program, where we're really going to be looking to develop these, your branding and your location and the decisions that you've made now, I want you to make sure that you've got exactly the right decision. And again, what I want you to do is make sure you're thinking with the end goal in mind. So some of the things that we've talked about previously around mindset, and when you built out your end goal, thinking with the end in mind, have that mindset in place as you make your way through the rest of this clinic location module. Because as you'll see, the three different locations that I break down, there are pros and cons for each of them. So even if you think you've made a decision around your location, or if you don't know your location at this stage at all, that's absolutely fine, because what I want you to do is assess the three areas that we're going to talk about and make a decision about which is the best one for you, both in the short term now and in the long term, as we start to scale your clinic up, moving towards that six-figure scale, that six-figure clinic that we're looking to achieve for you. So what I'll do now is I'll hop over to the laptop and we'll start to talk about this in a little bit more detail. So let's talk about the decision you want to make around your venue. Now, this is going to be your clinic. It's going to be your home. It's where you're going to build your business and where you build your brand from. So what I want you to do is really take your time to make sure that you have the correct decision for you, because as we're going to outline as we move through this training module, there's multiple decisions, pros and cons for each of the sort of three main categories. So I just want to sort of present those to you and also give you some case studies, some real life examples or some theoretical examples as to help you towards the making the right decision for you. As I say, for me, there isn't a right decision. You can look to make any of the options work, but I just want to, as I say, spell out some of the things that I know and understand from sort of practical experience. So let's talk about this as we make our way through. Okay, so firstly, as I said, there's three main options or three main categories, I think, for us to consider. There's a building that's purpose built to rent, so somewhere that's perhaps already a clinic, somewhere that's advertising that they have a space. There's a building that you can adapt to rent, and we'll talk about this more as we move into this, but this is something that I've done with two of our clinics now. So it's a building that you has space, but you adapt it to our needs. Or there's a building that you own, so that could simply be your home, or as in the case of my first clinic and still what's considered our main clinic, an outbuilding at the back of our home. So, but it's a building that you own. So firstly, if we kick off, we're talking about a building that is purpose built. So what have we got here? Well, what are the pros? Well, the obvious pro is that it's ready to quickly begin and launch your business. So we can, once you have that space and that space is yours, it's probably going to be purpose built, ready to go, and perhaps even adapted with all equipment, so you can move straight in and be working. So that's a nice pro about that one. It will create a professional feel. You know, you might be able to find a purpose built injury clinic or something like a health clinic or even a beauty clinic, something that gives that professional feel for your clients. Could also be a potential client source. So it might be that you perhaps take something I see as a room in another clinic. So for example, you might go to somebody who you can perhaps be a complementary service of. So whether it's someone like a chiropractor who you might then want to go along to offer a different service to that, and they've got some space that you can hire. It's purpose built, it's ready to go, but they might also be able to provide you with some clients. So something to consider around that one. And it's probably the easiest to find. So what I mean by that is, if you're looking for some clinic space, it's nice and easy to perhaps go onto Google, search for therapy rooms or something like that in your area, and there's websites dedicated to this, but there'll be people advertising about space potentially as well, so it may well be easy to find. But what are some of the cons then of this purpose-built building? Probably going to be the most expensive. So the fact that it's purpose-built, the fact that it's ready to go, it may well mean that it's the most expensive option for you to take, going to be charging perhaps the highest rent, and perhaps there's the least amount of negotiating or sort of clever deals that you can do around this one. So what that then does is place a financial pressure on you. So that will be one of the downsides to consider, that once you start, it's probably going to leave you with the biggest overhead or ongoing overhead for you to keep. So obviously you have to have a level of clients in order to keep up with those rent payments. And as a result, it can have the weakest return on investment. So what I mean by that is how much money we're putting in to compare to how much we're getting out, particularly when we're starting and launching a clinic. So definitely something to consider when we're making our decision around a building that is purpose built. And also it might give you the least control of the field. So yes, it might be purpose built and ready to go, but there might be less that you can do to it, or the people don't want you to do anything to it. You just have to use it kind of as you see is what you get. So it might be more difficult to put your stamp on it, or less easy to do that. So let's move on to the second option, a building that is converted for purpose to rent. Now, really, we have kind of two of our free clinics are this. One of our clinics is actually based as a physio room in a sports club. So you could argue that that is the first option, but it wasn't a clinic space that was being advertised. It was something that I approached them in order to get that deal. So what are the pros about finding a space that you then adapt to be suitable for you? Well, it allows you some creative control. So if you then take on that space that perhaps isn't being used, you can perhaps turn that into your dream clinic and everything you're looking to do. And as we make our way through the program, that'll be something that we want to talk about, is perhaps what might go into your clinic or the marketing that you do inside of your clinic to help with its feel. You may be able to find a location with dream clients. Now, this is kind of what I did with two of our clinics. I sought facilities that I thought, one, could give us space, and two, could give us extra clients. So let me give you sort of real life examples here. One of them is a big, it's a police sports playing arena that we approached, and they have a gym by them, a gym in the same building as them. So I knew that that would be able to, there's football pitches there. Clubs were playing there. So where I knew not only could we have the space, but that our dream clients, so as a sports injury clinic, we've got gym users and sports players walking around all the time. So I knew that with our banners and posters and things, we would be able to be picking up clients, and that's something that we did. So yes, I was looking for a place with the appropriate space, but at the same time, I was allowed to find a location that could also provide me with my dream clients. So, and you may be able to negotiate a better deal, or to even risk mitigate. Now, this is something that I have always done with building my businesses. Now, it's something that it can, in the end, right now, it gets to the point where potentially the success we've had, I can negotiate better deals to bring the rent payments back down. But having said that, what it allows me to do is to get the business going. So with both of our deals, for the two clinics that we have, where it was an external space that we've converted, what we have done is agreed a rental fee upon the amount of clients we see. So for every client, we pay them a fee. What that means is that if we don't have any clients, then we don't pay any rental. So this is really helpful. One, when you're first starting your clinic and you're looking to build, and two, when things happen, i.e. COVID, and you have to shut. We therefore weren't liable for any rental payments. So that allowed us to stay strong as a business. Now, what it has to, and this is something that we would look to support you on, and I explain in more detail in some of the documents, is that it allows you to perhaps be creative with your negotiations. So what I explain to the premises that I've spoken to is that they could perhaps, we could take on a space that they're currently not using, so they're currently not income generating for them, and we can give them some income. And I gave them the examples of the amount of clients that I was seeing elsewhere. Now, if you're starting your clinic, what you can do is take our case study to show as a real life example of something that's happened. So a space that wasn't being income generated, and we have given them income. And what I said is, what we could do is we could start with a fixed amount. But what that may mean for my business is that I can't get it off the ground. So the first deal that I made, they approached me about saying, well, you can have it for £50 a week for an evening. And what I explained to them is that £200 a month, we'd have to see X amount of clients to even break even. So what it might mean is that we never get the deal going. Whereas what I then came back to them with and said, how about we give you a price per hour for clients we see? And therefore, over time, if we get to the levels of our other clinics, this is what we'll be giving you. And so at the time of this recording, our last rental payment to that clinic was about £650, I think £700. Now, in truth, that's probably perhaps even higher a rental value than I should be paying for the property. But having said that, for a long time before that, I wasn't paying anywhere near that as we built the clinic. But their initial deal of £50 for the week would have only let them £200 a month. So now what we've actually managed to do though is broker a deal for a longer time. They were talking about one evening a week. We now have it 5 days a week. So actually, but for all parties, it's worked out better. They now get much more income than they ever thought they were going to get for a space they weren't using. But this was a deal that we brokered about 2.5 to 3 years ago. So it allowed us the time to get the clinic off the ground. So I hope that makes sense. We're going to talk about this a bit more in an actual case study in a second, but I just wanted to explain that point about risk mitigation, because that I think is really helpful when you're starting a business. So, and you can also choose a convenient location. So again, you might approach people who are close to your home, somewhere where it's a nice place for you to go, somewhere where you admire the facility, somewhere where you can be proud of as well. So they're all things to think about. So what are the negatives to this? Well, it will require some upfront costs. Now that cost could be financial, it could be time, your own personal time and labour, or it could be an element of both. So a lot of the time, if you're approaching places who have areas of space that they aren't using to income generate, they're probably not going to be perfect for your clinic. And this is what we had with ours. We had to go in and paint walls, and we had to get ceilings done, and we've had to lay flooring. So there was upfront cost and my time to do some of these things, or what you might call sweat equity, we term it in business, where you're putting your time and effort into helping to build your business. So that is a con that it probably won't, like as in the previous example of the purpose-built clinic, it won't give you that perfect clinic to walk straight into. I'm sure it will take some of your time, but that was something I was always prepared to do. I was always prepared to work hard and put in some extra time to achieve my dreams. And I like the fact that I had that creative control. You have to go and source a location. So these people aren't people that are advertising the fact that they're renting a clinic. So you might actually have to approach clinics. You might have to speak to people you know, find out a way, but be a little bit more creative. You might have to kit out the space to make it functional. It says behind there. Let me just move me out the way. Them kit out the space to make it functional, as I say. So that might be something to consider there. Let me just move me out of the way, getting in the way there of the notes. So yeah, so a purpose-built clinic might be all ready to go, whereas then you come in and you've got to be kitting out this space with your equipment and things. So again, perhaps a more of an upfront cost to be considered. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll move through into a case study for converting a building. So this goes over some of the things that I've just said. Just to reiterate, my first deal that I was offered in the second clinic that I ever launched was this £50 for one evening. So that would equate to £200 per month. But what we managed to do was agree a fee of £8 per hour, or it's £4 per appointment, because the majority of our appointments are 30 minutes in duration. But what this allowed me to do, as I explained previously, was risk mitigate. So it allowed me the time to build the clinic and not make it cost prohibitive. So 3 years later, we are now, as I mentioned, paying upwards of £600 per month to use the clinic for 5 days. So when we consider though that is still only around £25 a day to use the clinic. And what we do is we build this into our pricing. So throughout the module, we will talk about pricing in terms of how to set the correct price. But that's something that we factor in as an expense. So when we're choosing our pricing, we factor in all our expenses. So what was the cost of oil? What was the cost of the couch roll? What was the cost of our systems? And actually another cost is what is the cost of the venue? So therefore, we're still happy with the profit that we're getting at the end of this. So hopefully, again, you're getting an insight in the thinking as a business owner, which is what we're going to do more of as we make our way through the program. But that's something that was all factored in. But I still feel at £25 a day for a lovely facility, it has a car park, it has a waiting area, it has our treatment room, is a really good deal. But it's worked out well for all parties, and that's why I feel quite strongly about this one. But as I say, there are pros and cons to all things. And as I mentioned, during coronavirus, it helped to save our business, this risk mitigation, because I had no rent to pay while we were shut. And so finally, the third option is a building that is one that you already own. So as I mentioned, this could be a house, your own home, perhaps bedrooms in your own home, or an outbuilding, an additional building. So what are the pros? Well, this allows you full creative control. It's your space. You can do exactly what you like with it. So, and as a result, it can be a fantastic return on investment. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in the next case study after this one, because again, I can give you a real life case study from inside my own business. So it can also allow for flexibility and ease of working. So what I mean by that is you can perhaps fit appointments in the times to suit you. Whereas if you're using external space, there might be more ties, particularly in the purpose-built, the option one, a clinic room that's being advertised, you might have to commit to those hours. Whereas if it's from your home or a building that you own, you can kind of choose when you're working, and that might allow you greater flexibility. And there's no commute. So in itself, that's quite nice that there's no commute. But what it does do is it allows you to be maximising your time. So if you're spending an hour commuting, half an hour to and half an hour from, what all of a sudden you can do is take that extra hour that you would have been commuting and put that into your marketing, or put that into your systems developments, or all the things that we're going to be talking about, and that helps you scale up to a six-figure business. So it's maximising your time. Again, you'll hear me talk about this return of investment, an important way for you to be thinking. And what that's doing is a return on investment on your time. So if you're using your own building and you've got 2 hours of appointments, it's only 2 hours of work. Whereas if it was external and it was 3 hours of work, including traveling time, with your own building, you get 2 hours of working and then 1 hour of building your business and working on your business. So particularly when we're using this as a side income or part-time employment, I find this and have found this myself to be really helpful. The cons, well, it will probably require some upfront costs. So, as I say, if you were looking to build, and I'll come on to the case study about what I did, but was to build an outbuilding, there was an upfront cost to there. If you're looking to convert somewhere at home, there's probably going to be a cost to take it from your sort of home dwellings, as it were, and make it a treatment area. So that's definitely something to consider. Now, it can be very invasive on personal space. Again, before I launched the current 3 clinics that I have, I've worked from my old house, what is now my parents' house. I used my old bedroom. That was when I first started out, and it worked really well for me. But what it was very invasive on their space. Now, they were my parents. They were fantastic. They were a huge help to me. They really got my business going. But I was conscious that it was an invasion on their personal space. So it would be wrong of me to just really promote all the features of working from your own space without saying there is an invasion on space. And when I actually built my own clinic at my own home with an outbuilding, that was something that was very important to me, that it was accessed not through my home. It was separate access to stop this invasion of personal space. So this can be avoided, but it's just something to consider if it's your own home. And there may be additional extra costs to consider. So for example, I pay more home insurance because I have an outbuilding that is frequently visited by people. I have to pay some extra home insurance. So certain costs that you may need to consider as well, depending upon the situation that you need to set up. So if you're looking to work from home, I suggest that you do make sure that you check that you have the right things and insurances and agreements in place by speaking to your insurance providers and perhaps your local borough or council to make sure that you've got the right approvals in place, even for part-time employment. Now, there is the potential for it to have less of a professional feel. Of course, when I first started my clinic, I was initially working from my parents' house. Now, does that give the same professional feel that my clinics give now? No, it would be wrong of me to say it didn't. But what I would say though is that actually people are much less worried about this if you're giving them the other value, the things that we are going to talk about throughout this program when we talk about the customer journey and what we term preeminence and how we build that for your clinic so people are actively excited about getting into your clinic. If you're making them aware of what to expect but showing them all the value you can give, then this kind of negates some of this in my view. But it's definitely something to consider when you're making a decision, that it would undoubtedly give less of a professional feel. So a case study for your own building. Again, this is inside my business. This is real life stuff. So what I'm saying is potentially, I talked in the last clinic that we pay around £25 per day for the one of my other clinics. So £125 per week, £500 a month. So again, if we take this as a rental cost, for example, that you might be charged for an external building, you might look at that. Don't know how you feel about £500 a month. That's quite a large overhead to take on. But when you break it down to £25 per day for a 5-day week, perhaps not so bad. But again, let's take that as an example of something that you might be offered as a clinic. So £6,500 per year. Now, when I decided to build an outbuilding, which is a cabin, a sort of log cabin at the back of my house, as I say, it's access down the side of the driveway. Initially, I probably, all in all, and I've built a clinic, I've built a side office, and we put electrics in there, we put new flooring, and Wi-Fi and things. And all in all, I paid around £5,000 for that. Okay, so a large upfront cost, I appreciate. But let's break this down a little bit though, because under the other rental agreement, that my clinic was paid for within 9 months. So within 9 months, I'd actually covered the cost that I was going to commit to the rent. So this is sometimes where it's a little bit difficult to think about. Now, you might speak to an external company who look to rent you a room and say, look, we're going to charge you £25 per day. You think, well, that sounds good. We need you to commit to a year contract. Okay, that's £6,500 you've just lost. So actually, by perhaps if you back in yourself, you can perhaps take some of that overhead cost, and what you'll see as we move on is that you can save a lot of money. So because my clinic, my cabin, has been in operation now for over 9 years. So when we consider 9 years of £6,500 of rent, this has saved me over £50,000 in this hypothetical situation. And again, this is how I want you to be thinking as we make our way through this membership program, is I need to think as a business owner. So even if the initial cost is high, you could potentially look to spread that cost over a period of time, because you know that the return on the investment is there. And this is the difference is, as I say, is thinking like a business person, thinking what you're going to get for that return of investment. So yes, it was £5,000, but if you spread that over a few years, for example, you could spread that over 3 years and then only be paying about £1,600 a year. So all of a sudden that becomes a lot cheaper. So it's trying to be clever. It's trying to be really getting a good grip of your finances. And as I say, having a real think about the right way to do this. So now, as you say, throughout all of this, you could argue that of my 3 clinics, we actually have one from each section. So there are pros and cons, and whichever way you decide to go, then you will be making a right decision, I'm sure. But what I want you to do is just make sure that the pros for you can outweigh the cons, and that's the decision. And that's what I wanted to present across this presentation, because choosing your venue is a huge decision. Once you choose your venue, again, you've got to love it first and foremost. You want to be spending, a lot of your time there. You want to feel passionate about it. You want to be a reflection of your brand. So I want you to make the right decision, but I also want it to be something that will allow your business to grow, to not stop your business before it started. And that's what I think I see a lot of the time from others, is that they jump into starting a new clinic, take on overheads, and it doesn't allow their business to start. So what I would be, again, whatever deal you enter into, be clever with it. Research the different options. Whatever costs you need to go down, can you negotiate some deals if it's with an external provider? Can you explain that it's going to be better for them in the long term? And that's what the sort of case study that we've presented here can give you some examples of that. And as I say, we attach a document to this program that you can feel free to use and explain, and we happily provide references around that. So I hope this information has been really helpful, but enjoy going to find your perfect clinic. Enjoy the research, enjoy making the right decision, because once that's set up, the rest of it, then we can really start building and making that clinic fantastic. And who knows, you might further down the line be scaling these clinics and be able to try each of the options to find out which is the right one to suit you. As I say, for me, I've now managed to sample lots of these pros and cons, and that's allowed me to make the appropriate decisions for the future of our business as we look to scale towards 7 figures now. So I hope, as I say, that this has given you the detail you need. Feel free to reflect upon this. There's a lot of information potentially in this one. Look at the pros, look at the cons, and make the right decision for you, your venue, your business, and your practice and brand.